Welcome once again to Fatima Today. This is Kay Drowan, a member of Fatima Today, a lay apostolate of the South Shore. We're pleased to bring a special program and a special guest. With me is Father Allan Roche, pastor of St. Monica's Church in Methuen, Massachusetts. Hi, Father.
How are you, Kay?
I'm fine, and I'm really happy to see you finally.
Oh, thank you.
We have been trying to get you to visit us for weeks, and every time I call and ask you to come on the show, you have someplace else to go.
Well,
you're a busy fellow.
I wish I were, Kay. I appreciate very much being here, though, this morning.
Well, we're glad you could finally make it. Now, where were you, in North Carolina? What were you doing down there?
I went down to receive a little award last week. I was stationed in North Carolina, Kay, in my first few years of the priesthood. And then it was my first return visit in 41 years last week.
It's been that long.
But everybody had forgotten me, and I was just a non-entity, I guess, last week. Yeah.
But they couldn't have forgotten you if you were down there to get an award.
Well, I don't know what kind of an award it was. It didn't mean too much anyway.
It didn't,
No.
huh? Well, I bet it meant a lot to the parishioners, and there must have been some there who really thought highly of you to have you back like that.
Well, thank you, Kay. I'm not too sure, though.
Well, your reputation is very good around here. I hear so much about Father Roche in Methuen. I have relatives in your parish, and they are just crazy about St. Monica's and the leadership you're giving that parish. And our own director of this show, Fatima Today, Louise Marciano, is in charge of booking in the National Pilgrim Virgin statue of Our Lady of Fatima throughout New England. And I know she called upon you to be her spiritual director in this work.
Yes.
So your name is bouncing at me from all directions.
Thank you, Kay.
And your claim to fame, I understand, is the Miracle of Broadway. St. Monica's Church is on Broadway in Methuen.
Yes.
And I understand from my cousin it's called the Miracle of Broadway. What about that?
Well, Kay, we started about 15 years ago. We're beginning our 15th year this year of the novena to the Miraculous Medal. I had it in North Carolina. I thought I might start it, see how it would work out in St. Monica's. And you know, for the past 15 years, we've had standing room in the church every Tuesday night. That would include the frigid winter evenings, and the people have been attending so faithfully. So now, as perhaps your cousins or friends might have told you, people gather at St. Monica's about 3/4 of an hour before we actually begin the novena.
Just to get a seat?
Just to get a seat. The church, of course, is small, but we do have 400 or 500 there every Tuesday night. And they sing Marian hymns for a half hour. Brings back memories of their youth. They're so delighted to sing the old Marian hymns once again. But fortunately, it seems to be doing pretty well. Each year I expect a complete drop-off, but they return somehow the following year. This year, the 15th year, has seen the heaviest attendances thus far.
Isn't that wonderful?
It's great.
Now, this goes on year-round, Father, or?
We take a couple months off during the summer, but the others every single
Tuesday.
Yes.
And are you getting pretty much the same people back?
No, we mentioned that, the group of people mentioned the other evening, that we almost have an entire new congregation during this, the 15th year, than we had when we first started out. We still have, of course, 40 or 50 of the regular faithful in the parish, but there's been a complete turnover of people at the novena, which is great. It keeps us going.
I guess so. Now, do you think you're attracting people from St. Monica's or from the whole area to this novena?
I think Merrimack Valley, Kay, that's what the people are saying. You draw upon Andover, North Andover, Lawrence, Salem, New Hampshire, Windham, New Hampshire.
And what time does the novena start?
It begins at 7:10.
So people are actually there by about 6:30.
Church is always full at 6:45.
Isn't that wonderful? And this is to Mary, the Miraculous Medal. Now, why did you particularly pick the Miraculous Medal as your novena?
Well, I guess, Kay, simply because I happen to have that novena in North Carolina. I really didn't know much of any of the other novenas. I knew something about the miraculous medal. And it's fairly easy to conduct, and that's why I wanted to give them some little memento of the Mother of God, and we distribute medals after each novena service. So it gives them something to be mindful and aware of during the week.
That's great. Now, what do you do besides the novena? You sing Marian hymns, and you have the novena prayer. What other format does it take?
We have about a 5-minute homily, and then we have benediction of the Blessed Sacrament, which is something extremely rare today.
Yes.
The children, of course, attending for the first time, are completely unaware of what's taking place. This devotion is so new to them. So just for the fact of having the benediction is so wonderful for the children. And so we finish about, excuse me, Kay, about 25 minutes of 8 or so.
Right. So the children aren't used to seeing this adoration of the exposed Eucharist and the incense and all that goes with that adoration. Isn't that wonderful that you are exposing them to that? Now, they're thronging there, and there has to be more than hymns. They must be getting answers to their prayers from Our Lady. She must be channeling great grace into that novena.
Well, I sort of emphasize in the little talks about Mary's promise of never leaving anyone unaided who go to her seeking her intercession. So I try to impress to the best of my ability. It's not so much that they will get an answer to their prayer, but that they will get enough courage and strength to cope with the daily adversities that are bound to come into their life. So I think that's the strongest point of the novena, the fact that they assure that Mary will help them in some way to combat and face the difficulties.
And I think of the miraculous medal. Now, was that Catherine Labouré?
Right.
St. Catherine Labouré, who started the nursing order of sisters.
Yes.
Or what, did she start it, or was she just a member of the nursing order? I can't recall.
She was a member of the...
A member. Yeah. And she had this apparition of Mary, approved by the church. And I think of Mary, of the miraculous medal, as giving great grace flowing from her hands. That's the image. That's
the image in the medal, yes.
In the medal. And that was the image that Catherine saw.
Right.
Great grace coming from Mary. And I can't help but think how far away from the idea of this channeling of grace, making me a channel of your peace, as St. Francis said, this channeling of grace that Mary has the power to do, that the Lord has given her, this going through her. And today, how people are going toward channeling of spirits from other worlds, expecting this channeling to come through from clairvoyance to get help, when here we have the Mother of God being appointed and given that power by Christ.
Very
and people
well
people ignoring it, totally ignoring it. They're going to channelers.
Right.
And we have the greatest channeler.
That's so true.
The only channeler of grace, really.
Exactly.
Is Our Lady.
Right.
And I'm sure she's blessing that parish of yours, because to have people come out in the cold 10 months out of the year to honor her in this novena, you can't get that in another parish. I tried to start a novena in my parish and got my pastor's permission or his willingness to do so. I'd be lucky if I got 30 people.
Right. I can understand that very well, Kay, because when I started, some of the curates, the neighboring priests in the parish, said that, well, you'll get the regular 17 or 20 or 30 people, the faithful who will attend, but in today's age, you won't get any more than that. Certainly won't. So it's been a tremendous surprise to me, Kay, as well as everybody else.
Well, that's why it's called the miracle of Broadway. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Mary's working wonders there, and you obviously have great love in your heart for Our Lady. Did this come from your mom, dad, or did this come later in life, your love for Mary?
Well, okay, my mother had been more or less an invalid. I had four brothers and a sister, and she'd always would go to her bedside quite often, and she'd always seem to make sure we remember the Mother of God in our night prayers, and every little chance, I think she wanted to make up for the little deficiency in health. So she sort of applied us with more prayer and devotion than the ordinary child might possibly have. So he kind of grew up in the tradition of having great love and respect for the Mother of God. And I brought that kind of into my priesthood.
Your priesthood. Now, when was it that you felt this calling? I know a secret about you because I have a cousin who very fond of you, and she's in St. Monica's, and tells me that in your youth you were a boxer.
Yes, in high school and college. And right now I'm on the State Boxing Commission. I have been for the last 8 years, I think. I was just appointed by Governor Dukakis, just recently renewed the Boxing Commission appointment. But I didn't grow up in the tradition of most Catholic boys or many priests. I never went to a Catholic grammar school or a high school, and my first taste of religion formally was at Boston College. And I boxed all during college, and then a couple of years when I got through college.
You must have been pretty good if you're now on the boxing commission.
Not
you had won some awards.
Well, a few little things, but you know, that really didn't make that much difference. But I think it made my approach to the priesthood a little different. You know, I think you could emphasize the natural as well as the supernatural, I suppose, to make a well-rounded person in any walk of life, I think. I'm not too sure. I was a delayed vocation, and I was out of BC for a couple of years, and one night I met my brother Dave, who became a priest. He was out of BC for 5 years, and he came home one night and he was telling me about going into the seminary. It was the first time I ever thought about the seminary. So he entered and was at the Grand Seminarian up in Canada for a few years, and I asked him a few questions, and that led me into pursuing the priesthood. So I spent sort of an abbreviated period of time at St. John's, just about a little less than 4 years. So my priesthood, I guess, would be quite a bit different from many of my peers who spent 5 or 6 or 7 years.
And that's because of your education at Boston College? Is that what abbreviated that education?
Well,
or were you on an accelerated track?
An accelerated program.
Oh, isn't that great? Now, tell me, why then, if you were in the Boston Diocese Seminary, did you end up in North Carolina? Because you said that was your first appointment.
Well, Kay, the late Bishop Minahan came into the seminary in our last years, and he said, you know, North Carolina, the Diocese of Raleigh, is really the mission point of the United States. He said there were fewer Catholics in proportion to the number of people than any place in the entire world, which would include the Belgian Congo, Africa, or any place. And he said they were in dire need of priests in right in our own country, North Carolina. Something? So that's how I happened to get down there.
And what year was that, you said?
1946, Kay.
1946.
Yeah.
And then we were blessed with a lot of vocations in the Diocese of Boston after 46, weren't we? Because we seem to be now at the point where you were when you went to North Carolina.
Gee, right after I was ordained, the classes seemed to grow larger and larger. One of my assistants at St. Monica's, I believe he was in a class of about 56. And that some of the classes were that large at that time, yeah.
So how big was your class?
I think there were 28 in the class.
Well, that's even bigger than we're having today.
Oh, sure, much larger than today.
At least around the United States.
Right.
So now, when you were pursuing your duties in the priesthood, did you visit any shrines? I know I'm aware that you had a trip to Our Lady of Guadalupe Shrine.
Yes.
I'm trying to find out something about that. Did that make any impact on your life?
Well, when I was later stationed in St. James in Boston, they had the official shrine of Our Lady of Fatima attached out behind the rectory. I think it was Monsignor Hurley established the shrine, or Dan Donovan. And we had a Fatima devotions in our parish there once a month, and Monsignor Shea appointed me as the chaplain of the Fatima Guild. And consequently, at that time, I began to take a few trips in different places in the world to the shrines of the Blessed Mother. That's how I happened to get a little acquainted with her. I certainly don't know as much about the Blessed Mother as most of the priests in the Archdiocese, but I did become familiar with the various apparitions of the Blessed Mother and traveling to most of the continents.
Isn't that wonderful? So I knew that you had gone to Mexico, to Our Lady of Guadalupe, where that miraculous image is, but I had no idea that you have gone to so many Marian shrines.
I think I've gone to, you know, I went overseas over 20 times to the various continents, to the shrines. But of course they were very abbreviated trips, but it gave you a little cross-section of the devotion to the Mother of God. It always impressed me tremendously to see the devotion of the lay people at these shrines. I think they did more for me than just about anything. To see the great love and dependence that the people, many living in poverty, had upon the Mother of God.
Isn't that something? Now, did you feel that this pursuit of where she had actually been, these approved places where the church, having studied the apparition, said, well, yes, there's something that is worthy of belief there, something, as the church gave her blessing to pilgrims to go to these places. Did you feel in the search, were you searching for Mary, or did you feel that at that time you had her in your heart and you were just giving her homage?
I think the latter would be true, Kay. I really had a firm belief in her power, her intercessory powers, and I thought maybe that a visit would just strengthen my belief that already existed in the Mother of God. As I just said, many of them were very cursory visits, 2 or 3 days and move on, but it was a real strengthening factor in my devotion to the Mother of God to have visited these various shrines in the world.
And she's blessing your work, isn't she?
Well, I hope so, Kay. I'm not too sure.
Well, it certainly is happening there in Methuen. And I think people, the faithful, you say the faithful did a lot for you. The faithful, you saw their deep faith and in their poverty. But yet, don't you think that here, now that you're in the States, people are yearning for someone to exude this confidence and in Mary, and they're waiting for someone to say, here, let me help you. This is where your grace is to be found. This is your way to Christ.
I think that would be very evident, Kay, in the way they attend the novena and have maintained their attendance through the year. Certainly they must be receiving some little encouragement and grace to keep going, and it seems quite evident. There's one little factor about the novena that might be interesting. I remember mentioning one night at the novena that during the beginning of Lent that we're going to have the Stations of the Cross the following Friday night, and it would seem that the Stations was a lost devotion in the church. And I said, wouldn't it be nice now if we could have some of the people here tonight at the novena to come to the Stations? And since that time, we've had a full church every Friday night for the Stations of the Cross. I think I can see Mary's intercessory hand entering upon this devotion, and it has helped the parish considerably during Lent.
In this day and age, people are so busy. Husbands and wives are both working. The kids are also pretty active in after-school things. And to get people to come out and, you know, they're so tired at the end of the day, and to push them out every week, I think that is fabulous.
That's
and
right.
it's wonderful that you're getting this prayer life to come back in to their lives. I'm sure that anyone who starts praying to Mary is led to a deeper prayer life as well. She seems to stimulate that, doesn't she?
Yeah, it's certainly a very helpful aspect of living to have this trust and reliance on Mary, the Mother of God. It's very consoling in everybody's life, I believe, to have Mary, because she's been given to us by our divine Son just for that purpose, as a mother, and a very effective mother, and a very normal mother to go in times of difficulty and trouble. We try to make the devotion as normal and as natural and as up-to-date and day-to-day as possible, Kay.
What would you say is the central message of all the apparitions? Certainly if you visited these shrines, you took away with you the message she had to the people at each one of these sites. And what would you say through the years, the centuries really, if you go back to Guadalupe in the 1500s, what is she telling her children when she comes? What is her main message?
Well, Kay, I've often mentioned at the novena, you know, the various apparitions, Our Lady of Guadalupe, Our Lady of Lourdes, Our Lady of Fatima, and so forth. I always sort of mention, I read at some place or other, that we should perhaps refer to Our Lady's apparitions as Our Lady at Guadalupe, Our Lady at Lourdes. It's the same Blessed Mother, and she has about the same message at all the apparitions. So I believe that the basic fundamental message would be just a devotion to our Mother of God, who has reassured us at each of her visits she's still with us, wants to help her children, if we'd only learn to go to her in our needs and necessities. So in answer to the question, Kay, I didn't see any real big difference at any of the various apparitions, but the fact that Mary was speaking as the Mother of God at each apparition.
Do you think that there's just a need in every generation for people to have some confirmation of the divine? Not that she's divine, but the fact that she always mentions the divine. She always mentions her Son. She always brings her Son into her message of people should stop offending my divine Son and turn to him and away from their sin, and to pray to him and pray to her, and she will intercede for them. But do you think that we get a little, you know, indifferent, and she comes to just reaffirm the presence, the supernatural presence in the world? It seems that when she arrives, we sort of need it. It's a time in the history of man when man is desperately in need of some feeling that there's something supernatural that can be tapped upon and help us in our lives. I'm thinking of Fatima, particularly during World War I. She came and stressed that she could bring peace. She could bring peace if we would turn to her, offer prayers, especially the Rosary, to the Lord, and she could collect these and give these prayers and petitions to him and be effective. So I just feel she just reaffirms that each time. During even Guadalupe, it was a time when Montezuma was fighting with Cortez, and they were all pagan, and they needed to feel that there was a higher power over their lives. Do you agree with that? Or am I
do, but
searching for something that isn't there?
Approached, you know, my particular devotion, and I'm only one of countless priests. I'm sure that there are many, many priests who have a much more effective devotion than I have to the Mother of God. But I think that every human being, every child of Mary, certainly needs a mother so many times during their ordinary lifetime. I think the youth of today certainly are searching and groping and attaining wrong ends for peace and happiness, and our Blessed Mother is just waiting there to be taken into their arms. So I would think that you're absolutely right. The teaching of the Church would reiterate, Kay, what you just said about the Mother coming at necessary times in our life, at crucial periods in crises. But we all have our individual souls to save, and certainly we all go through these crises in our personal life. And I think if we grow up with a knowledge and a love of the Mother of God, she sort of becomes a natural part of our life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, your own mother, you said, was an invalid.
Well, she never was too well, you know. Yeah.
Was she able to see you through most of your adulthood?
Yeah, she was, but she never attended like high school or college graduations or ordination or anything like that.
The big things in life.
Was always confined to the home.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think I picked up a little more knowledge of the Mother of God and certain aspects of our religion than many people, because she tried to compensate for the lack of doing little things a mother would do in the home by sort of talking to us and trying to instill religion in some way or other. I don't know how she made out, but that's what she tried to do anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I should say you had a delayed vocation. It was through your brother.
My brother Dave, yes.
Where did your brother get this vocation? How did he get the
Well,
feeling?
that's what fascinated me, Kay. The thought that struck me. Why did he turn to, you know, religion and God in that aspect to become a priest? That's my first inkling or turning point to the priesthood, to that particular thing. I guess it was just a little training we had from our mother's knee, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she left the seed of a vocation there.
You know, there's another aspect of your life that I'd like to investigate with you, and that is you had the wonderful opportunity of meeting with Padre Pio of Pietrelcina in Italy. And this man died in 1968. He's up for beatification in the church. He was the only priest stigmatist in the history of the church, which is the bleeding, the wounds of Christ, and he bled for 50 years. We did a little history of his life on one of our shows, and you had that wonderful opportunity of meeting with him. Do you think that you could stay and share that with us? And I want to assure the audience that we're going to continue to record this program, and we'll show you the show on Padre Pio and Father's experience with this wonderful priest in our next segment. So don't forget to watch us, and you can write to us. We are Fatima Today, Post Office Box 243, Cohasset, Massachusetts 02025. May God bless you.